experience. I never shared it with anybody, but I thought it was pretty interesting.
In the summer of 2000, Howard's ship, the USS Thorn, was docked off Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, after routine maneuvers.
It was kind of late, 10 o'clock, so it was coming back to the ship. I'm walking down the pier. I was pretty tired, so I wanted to get back before everybody, you know, so I could get back and get some sleep. And the pier was pretty long. I was about 30 paces ahead of everybody. I saw like this glowing white light out of the corner of my eye. I was walking, I kind of looked to the side, and it was glowing under the water.
The glowing USO initially appears about 30 yards from the pier. Howard estimates the object at almost 10 feet across. As it approaches, Howard comments he couldn't tell if the object was man-made.
At first it kind of like popped up out of nowhere, like a soft white glow. As I'm looking at it, it gets brighter and brighter, and then that's when the other two lights popped up behind it. Almost formed like a triangle. It was a light here, and a light here. At first I really wasn't afraid because it was just one soft light. It just was kind of weird to me. But then when the other two lights popped up behind it and they started moving, that's when I got kind of afraid. I was like, hey guys, come look at this, look at this.
The other seamen respond to Howard's calls, but arrive too late. The USO has disappeared under the water. He has never seen anything like it before or since, and hopes to never see another.
I've been out to sea for almost 17 years now. I've never seen anything like this. It was weird.
Similar sightings continue to surface from the areas adjacent to Santa Catalina Channel off the coast of Los Angeles.
Tomorrow, off a dive ship, we're going to go out with divers to find trace evidence of that 1992 USO sighting right here in Santa Monica Bay.
June 14th, 1992, 10:24 p.m. Multiple witnesses reported seeing over 200 bright, disc-shaped objects silently exiting the water and hovering for a moment before bursting into space. Reports of this incident were phoned into local police departments as far away as Malibu.
Moscow Sheriff Station. Did anyone report anything strange tonight? More than one specific, strange light. Light? Yes. What exactly happened to you? I'm ashamed to tell you because I think you're going to think I'm crazy. We saw what we thought was a bright light up in the sky. Okay. We could hear it wasn't a helicopter. I'm telling you, I have never been more frightened in my life.
On March 9th, 2006, Patrick Uskert, Kevin Brune, and Julius Willis invited the History Channel along on a research expedition to seek evidence of USOs in the Santa Catalina Channel. Where, coincidentally, at 9:37 p.m. the night before, witnesses reported seeing several disc-shaped silver USOs diving into and out of the channel. Uskert, Brune, and Willis were joined on this 11-hour quest by UFO researcher and veteran sailor Captain William Burns, and by Preston Dennett, who first reported on this large-scale 1992 USO event in these waters off of Los Angeles in our previous broadcast.
So we're all set today, right? You got the Geiger counter?
I got all the scientific equipment.
You have
ready
all
to
these
go.
vials and everything we need?
Yep,
You got the
collection.
tanks?
I got the tanks,
You got
I
the
got the
underwater
camera.
camera?
Yeah,
Infrared?
housing, infrared we have. Yeah.
We're all set.
Great.
Okay, let's go.
Their plan is to dive in two areas of the channel. Divers Uskert and Brune will collect samples, and Brune, a PhD and research scientist, will conduct preliminary testing on the ship and further testing later in his lab.
Our mission was go down, collect samples, and basically look for any evidence of underwater UFOs.
In this largely unexplored area, called the Redondo Trench, detection of USOs has been hampered by its incredible depth, in some places reaching almost 1 mile. Sonar on most ships is incapable of tracking anything this deep.
Good morning, folks. Welcome aboard the Pacific Star. I guess we're going to go out to the trench this morning. Trench drops off fast, probably a 60-degree angle. Drops down to, well, my meter goes to 1,400 feet, and I can't find the bottom. But to go too deep because we don't know what's there. Jump, Joe!
The ship leaves Redondo Beach, California at 8:37 a.m. It heads due west into the murky waters of the Pacific. The team faces a strong breeze and heavier than normal chop.
The only thing that could possibly be worse is if that wind were to pick up. Well, as we get these ground swells rolling through like this, they will stir up the bottom 70, 80 foot down. Have to bump into them down there in order to find anything.
At 9:22 a.m., the team catches their first glimpse of something unusual.
Look at that! Holy cow!
A strange anomaly is witnessed on the surface of the water.
Guys, I'm serious. Look at that.
The round impression, approximately 15 feet across, vibrates constantly as it is seen to disappear as quickly as it came.
Sounds crazy, but there have been a lot of UFO crashes, 40 or 50 at least. So it's entirely possible that there is some type of material down there. There's plenty of places for USOs to hide.
That's the trench.
The captain orders the anchor down about 2 nautical miles downrange.
We're looking for a couple of things. Are there any patterns on the bottom of the water, any trace evidence that remains from the soil? Is there any radioactivity down there? Are there any strange elements? People in this area saw this craft last night. So if that craft was here last night, if that craft left the traces, our guides on the bottom are collecting those traces now and bringing them up to the surface, and we're going to see these traces be tested. What's the visibility like down there?
Very well, like 5 to 10 feet.
Yeah, 5 to 10 feet.
Too rough to see anything. Couldn't see much when we were down. Hopefully Pat's getting some footage, maybe some samples.
While Uskett reported that he sensed something peculiar in the water, the conditions prevented him from seeing it. He did, however, collect samples for testing.
Couldn't see a thing. Just my flashlight beam going into blackness. If there is someone who wanted a place to hide, that'd be a pretty nice place to hide. Nice and dark, nice and deep. I didn't feel like I belonged there. I didn't feel like I was supposed to be there.
Due to poor visibility at this location, the team moves 4 miles downrange, even further into the channel.
We're going to head out to another spot where, again, if you were trying to camouflage yourself, you're probably sitting right here in the best place to be camouflaged.
With underwater visibility of less than 15 feet at the first location, the divers prep a more sensitive camera to record evidence in this deeper area.
Here's your camera. I already got it in the housing.
Okay.
I'll set it up so it's especially sensitive to low light. If there's anything down there, you're going to see it.
They're taking samples from the bottom of the ocean bed, and they're going to be testing these for radioactive traces and chemical traces. USOs leave traces. Maybe they're magnetic, maybe they're highly electrical charged. They're looking to test for electrical charges, for magnetism, and for radioactivity.
The clearer conditions at this location help the divers collect samples. And this time, they find something unusual.
I'm pretty satisfied with what we collected. We're gonna check it with the Geiger counter, see if they're reading hot. Great. So just open the lid on these. Negative on this one.
Whoa, you got a lot of small samples here. Wow.
All right, we got something. We got something.
Due to the elevated Geiger counter reading, the team decides further testing is needed.
All right, the rest we can do back at the lab.
Awesome.
So it's really no mystery why a USO would choose this particular area to hide in. They just can't be seen.
We can't really know what the results will be until we analyze everything and put it all together. But it's all part of the process.
What we try to do is test our hypotheses by setting up very controlled experiments, trying to eliminate variables. And out here, it's very difficult to eliminate all these variables that we deal with. So we're kind of on the level of just observing. And if anything comes up strange or worthy of continuing investigation, then we'll certainly be back out here, I think.
Kevin will probably agree with me here, right? There's a good probability that they're down there.
If you're going to find anything, you got to look.
Further testing on the USO sample proved inconclusive. However, due to the initial positive result on sample number 2, a more comprehensive USO dive is planned for the fall of 2006.
We got to go back.
Coming up, we'll open the secret files of one of America's first nuclear-armed aircraft carriers, the USS Franklin D. Roosevelt, to uncover why she continues to be at the heart of the worldwide USO controversy. Of the U.S. Navy's many great technical achievements after World War II, few surpassed the dramatic might, power, and capabilities of its Midway-class carrier, the USS Franklin D. Roosevelt. Commissioned on October 27, 1945 from the New York Naval Shipyards, the 1,000-foot-long, 64,000-ton FDR was one of the first ships in the Navy's fleet to carry nuclear weapons full-time.
The Franklin D. Roosevelt was a very capable ship in every stretch of the imagination. She was an experimental floating active laboratory for the entire Navy Department.
According to many of the men who served aboard the FDR, the ship's sophisticated capabilities caused the carrier to be at the center of one of the great USO mysteries of the 20th century.
I have no doubt about the existence of UFOs and their interaction with the Franklin D. Roosevelt, and there have been many other sailors out there who have had the same experience as I have had.
There's probably a good connection with the USS FDR and the nuclear weapons and the UFO sightings. There's a magnet for UFOs.
Chet Gruzinski served aboard the FDR from July 1958 until December 1960 as a fireman and metalworks engineer. He says his harrowing close-range encounter with a large USO-like object in September 1958 off Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, has distressed him ever since. He tells his story on camera for the first time.
We're down below decks this evening between 8 and 9 o'clock. It was dark outside. A bunch of men come running up the ladder from the engine. My buddy then said, "Hey, Red, why don't you go up there and see what's going on?" So I followed those men all the way up the ladder, up to the hangar deck, all the way up to the flight deck.
Gruzinski witnessed a cigar-shaped UFO traveling at an incredible speed toward the FDR. He also comments that the object made no sound and maneuvered unlike any man-made aircraft.
We had no air operations going on. The flight deck was quiet up there. And this thing just came right at us, and I could see what the light was when it came at our ship. It was a row of windows with figures inside, and they got close enough I could feel the heat on my face and those figures looking at us through those windows. And the impression I got that those figures were looking at us were not human beings. And then this thing turned like a bright red-orange color, and I could see the shape of it. It was a cigar shape when it turned colors, and then it just took right off like that.
Gruzinski further reports that this bright USO-like craft rose from the water and remained relatively silent over this 45-second event before flying away. Approximately 25 of the shipmates reportedly witnessed this event as well. Most, he says, were quickly transferred off the FDR. Even more curious, he alleges that within hours, the ship's logbook was altered.
When I got the deck log, a lot of things are blackened out on the logbooks. There's nothing in there. And the witness was trashing off the ship, and they probably, I imagine they must have had to sign some papers to say something about it, but I never had to sign anything like that, maybe because I didn't say that much about it, you know.
After almost 50 years, his search for answers about what really happened that night continues.
I'm still trying to find these men on the flight deck. I didn't have to sign the papers. I wasn't transferred off the ship. I got a lot of whys. What happened? Why? That's what it is. That's why I've been spending all these years of research on it.
But Gruszinski is not alone in his belief that he witnessed a UFO while serving aboard the FDR. A second FDR veteran, Harry Jordan, served aboard the FDR from 1962 until 1965 as Seaman First Class. His rating as a radar operator put him in charge of one of the world's most advanced and sensitive radar systems.
She also had the capability of jamming rockets, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and even break through some of the countermeasures being put upon us by Soviet bloc countries.
While on duty in 1963, Jordan says he became part of another significant USO event aboard the ship that has remained secret until now.
And the Roosevelt definitely attracted UFOs because of all of the technical equipment and all of the armaments that she had, and also nuclear weapons.
Jordan agreed to tell his mysterious and alarming story of possible USO contact for the first time.
I do remember the incident and the details of it because it just stays with you when you've gone through this.
October 2nd, 1963, off the coast of Sardinia, approximately 2 a.m. Jordan stands watch over his radar monitor. All is normal on this unusually warm fall night. Suddenly and without warning, he says, a contact abruptly appears on his screen, an object 600 miles downrange at an altitude almost impossible for conventional aircraft to reach at the time, 80,000 feet.
The first blip came on at the beginning of about 2.5 hours into the watch. It was 600 miles from the ship at 80,000 feet. Then it came into 300 miles at about 35,000 feet, and then it came into about 10 miles at 10 to 15,000 feet from the ship off our port side. I reported it to the watch commander at the time, and he came over, went through the same process and confirmed it, and reported it to the officer of the deck on the bridge. Then the officer of the deck on the bridge woke up the captain after this contact started to move.
An object on Jordan's screen begins moving at a speed and on a course that, he believes, would have crushed any man-made aircraft.
This thing was covering 10 miles in just a few seconds, and it was traveling about 4,000 miles an hour. It was making right-angled turns, and it was almost like a Z pattern if you took about 4 Zs and lined it across your scope. So I could tell that she was going pretty fast, and then so when she stops, they didn't have any heat signature. Okay, this is highly unusual.
After Jordan makes his report, he says the FDR's captain orders the launch of a pair of Phantom II jets to analyze the situation.
They went to afterburners and then launched one right after the other. They left the Rosie and headed up on a course of about 012. So then I thought immediately that there might be something new going on here, because that wasn't following protocol as far as normal ship operations that I was used to.
The Phantom jets, now about 20 miles downrange, still see contact with the object. Jordan reports that the blip on his radar screen continues to dive close to the USS FDR before it disappears in a literal flash.
It's being recorded on the view board up on the right-hand side in CIC, and then the contact winked out about 20, 30 seconds after and I could hear one of the pilots say, "What the?" That's all I heard.
Moments later, he says, as quickly as it disappeared, the target returns, but now it's bigger and closer.
The Phantom II's landed, and then it winked back on again off the port side of the ship, and someone yelled out in CIC, you know, "What the hell is that?" And I bet you had 15 people out there with binoculars looking.
2:32 a.m. In full view of the FDR's crew, the USO reportedly hovers for a moment, several hundred feet from the ship, before disappearing.
I saw the Z pattern and it stopped. It winked out and then it was gone. I know what the fingerprints are of the electronics on Soviet aircraft, Korean aircraft, Chinese, MiGs, you name it. If it had been a meteor, it would have burned up in the atmosphere. And I have seen meteors streak across the scope, but it only happens in about 2 or 3 seconds. I mean, it's gone.
2:36 a.m. Jordan records the event in his logbook as a UFO incident. Seconds later, he says his commanding officer bursts in.
Jordan, what did you put in your log? And I had UFO in there, and I had the contact number at the time. I held it up in front of the commander, and he says, you can take that out. My commander acknowledged to me in not so many terms that, yeah, Jordan, that's what it was, but no, Jordan, nobody else is to know. Period. I had too much respect for him and the Navy to say anything about it for over 20 years. This was an historical moment for the United States Navy, and it was left out of the logs.
As astonishing as these mysterious first-hand encounters aboard the FDR might be, they are far from the only ones. During her unusually brief 32-year commission, the FDR will host at least a half-dozen similar events.
The FDR seemed to have been attractive to USOs. She certainly saw a lot of them.
Coming up, the 1952 NATO mission Operation Mainbrace is rocked by continuous UFO and USO reports. The lead ship, the USS FDR.
Wallace Litwin took photos of the flying disc going over the USS FDR in Operation Mainbrace.
I've interviewed 3 people separately who have been on the FDR where large UFOs have been seen over the ship, observing it, making its presence known, and at times interfering with what appears to be some of the electronics on the ship.
The Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the first aircraft carrier to carry nuclear weapons, and UFOs seem to be drawn to anything that's nuclear related. The first instance of this occurring was in the North Sea off England on NATO operations.
September 1952. NATO initiates Operation Mainbrace, the first cooperative multilateral maneuvers since the war.
The FDR was part of a NATO fleet exercise off Denmark called Operation Mainbrace. The FDR and the RAF and British aircraft carriers were witnesses to one of the most incredible multiple USO sightings in history. The Ministry of Defense in the UK actually wrote it up as a USO sighting.
The exercise involves 200 ships, 1,000 planes, and over 80,000 men from its member nations in the waters near Denmark. As one of the largest and most advanced ships of the time, the USS FDR leads the way.
She was part of a task force that was sealing off the Russian submarine access through the North Sea into the Atlantic. Extremely important because what if there had been a USO base underneath the North Sea in that area north of Europe? We were surveilling them, they were surveilling us.
September 13th, 1952. The Danish destroyer Willemoes is in the Baltic Sea north of Bornholm Island. Lieutenant Commander Schmidt-Jensen and several crew members reportedly see a luminous triangular-shaped object moving at high speeds above the water, in close proximity to the main fleet. The bluish object travels westward, then suddenly turns southeast, directly toward the FDR. Over the next week, there are several more sightings, stretching from Denmark back to the Air Operations Command bases in Scotland. September 20th, 1952, 7:30 p.m. 3 Danish officers reportedly observe a shiny, disc-shaped object rise from the water and pass over them. Again headed toward the NATO fleet and the FDR. The fast-moving metallic UFO heads east and disappears into the cloud layer. September 21st, 1952. Less than 24 hours later, 6 British pilots above the North Sea spot a shiny spherical object rising from the water and stealthily approach the fleet's location. They reportedly give chase, but the swift-moving object evades their pursuit. FDR veteran Jordan says that he spoke to a witness over 40 years ago.
They had a sonar contact from 3 or 4 destroyers, and they couldn't figure out what the hell it was because it was moving with them, and the damn thing was like a quarter mile wide. a quarter-mile wide, and it came up out of the water, and when it did, it dinged one of the ships. And that was later reported as a collision between two destroyers. And he says that's not what happened, because he went up and he said this damn thing came up out of the water and flew up.
According to reports, all of these sightings share a similar eerie trait. The witnesses uniformly feel that these USO objects, whatever they might be, are actually observing the naval exercises at close range.
After Operation Mainbrace, there were so many sailors who saw the objects and airmen from the RAF that saw the objects. This wasn't just one or two people. These were crew members on the USS FDR. So this is one of those very famous multiple sightings where everybody saw these objects.
One journalist aboard the USS FDR during the operations had perhaps the very best view of this reported swarm of USO activity through his camera lens. September 20th, 1952, 11 a.m. Several crewmen witnessed yet another fast-maneuvering spherical USO rise from the water to the sky just behind the fleet. Journalist Wallace Litwin, on board the FDR documenting the operation, points his 35mm Canon camera at the horizon and quickly snaps two images of a fast-moving disk that seemingly defies all laws of gravity. The images were believed to have been studied by the Navy, but no official report was ever filed.
Wallace Litwin took photos of the flying disc going over the USS FDR in Operation Mainbrace. And I got copies of his photographs there. It shows the object going over the ship, and you see the ship's superstructure and part of a wing of an airplane. Just like a bright light going over a ship with the photo show, but they said it was like a disc light to some of the witnesses.
USO sightings aboard the USS FDR during Operation Mainbrace were not exclusive to enlisted men and non-coms. Some believe that General Dwight Eisenhower may have even witnessed similar objects as a guest aboard the FDR.
I have heard reports that Eisenhower was on the FDR when one of these sightings occurred. The people who are the serious witnesses to operations and events have been afraid to come forward, both because they've been threatened, they're also afraid of being ridiculed.
According to experts, many documents involving Mainbrace remain classified. However, others have been released. Is there a motive for officials to keep 50-year-old events secret?
The military, in fact, the militaries of all first world nations treat these things as threats. They say the fact that they can penetrate airspace, they can go into highly secure areas, they can outfly our fastest jets. Does that mean they're hostile?
Although many FDR veterans and researchers suspect that the ship's advanced capabilities may have made her a target for otherworldly attention, some wonder, could all of this reported activity actually serve as proof?
I have spoken with people over the years since my Roosevelt experience and that one, and I've seen the evidence firsthand. To those who have not had those experiences, you cannot know what you've yet to experience, and hopefully you'll believe that they are out there.
Coming up, the architect of modern USO research, Ivan T. Sanderson's controversial discoveries and extraordinary USO cases. And later from Australia, two disc-like objects are witnessed leaving an impression on the surface of the water.
Now, Ivan Sanderson, explorer, taking you into adventure.
USOs in general are unidentified submerged objects. USOs have been in history for a long, long time, and an associate and friend of mine, Ivan T. Sanderson, did a study of them long ago. They are there all the time. They're in the data. They're a part of the phenomena.
Even more frightening than extraterrestrials is what Ivan T. Sanderson said when he wrote the book Invisible Residents. They're not extraterrestrials. They're already here.
To this day, the pioneering USO research by zoologist and former British spy Ivan T. Sanderson continues to astound and frighten experts and buffs alike. His controversial 1970 book, Invisible Residents, forever opened the world's eyes and ears to the murky realm of unidentified submerged objects. Sanderson proposes two primary theories about USOs and invisible residents. The first is that USOs are in fact here and have either evolved along with the Earth or have come from space and made a home in our oceans long ago.
When you talk about underwater UFOs, you have to remember that 3/4 of the Earth's surface is covered with water. And UFOs are seen pretty much all over the Earth, in every country. So it's not at all surprising that they're using the oceans, because we haven't even fully explored the oceans ourselves.
Sanderson's USO theories lead to a stark prospect. If over 50% of UFO reports occur on or above water, as he reports, are over 50% of these UFOs in fact USOs?
You know, UFOs are not just being seen over land. Ivan T. Sanderson said that 50% of all UFOs were actually being seen over bodies of water.
Do USOs mean that living underneath the surface of planet Earth is a whole civilization of creatures, entities, aliens, for whom Earth is home, just as it's home for us on the surface? And these were residents who've been here for millions of years, probably before life evolved on the surface of the planet.
As evidence of his second theory, Sanderson says there are several crucial points across the Earth, together forming an unseen invisible map, triangles that he refers to as vile vortices. By locating the areas where ships and aircraft reportedly disappear, Sanderson realized that the USO sightings correlate almost perfectly with the triangles on Earth, where it is believed that strange magnetic anomalies occur.
He wondered if some of these unusual spaces, whether they were called triangles or, you know, vortices or whatever, might have unusual animals, might have USOs coming in and out of them.
Sanderson's vortices theory has a terrible dark side as well. The major areas of anomaly are the areas located in some of the most treacherous water regions on Earth.
Ivan Sanderson did a latitudinal study and found out that there is a line around the planet in which geographic north and magnetic north merge. And these are areas that have a great deal of lost vessels, lost planes, and manifestations of objects.
After 17 years of research, Sanderson came to one startling conclusion. There is a clear link between the high number of USO reports and the areas of unusual gravitational or vortic poles on Earth. The specific areas where the two intersect are the mysterious triangle regions off Bermuda, Japan, and Australia.
I think it's about time that somebody does go into this thing instead of just sitting sadly and saying it doesn't exist, or saying support me, go ahead and prove it.
According to Sanderson, this link is no coincidence. He believes that the unusual magnetic hotspots on Earth and high number of USO sightings are connected, and for a reason. In fact, some USO researchers have interpreted the vortices as likely locations of USO bases.
Where he began to think about underwater bases. Are they aliens from outer space? Are they really interacting with us?
And I believe that over time, at various times, there have been concentrated areas of extraterrestrial facilities that are based underwater, very deep and undetectable, where they've been observing what we're doing.
USOs might be indigenous to planet Earth. They were even here before we were.
A remarkable yet virtually forgotten USO case from Sanderson's research is the mysterious St. Andrew incident off the coast of Nova Scotia, Canada, on October 30th, 1906.
One of the great cases from the early part of the 20th century is the SS St. Andrew. She was a vessel that was crossing the Atlantic on her way to Hamburg. She was off Halifax when not only her crew, but passengers aboard that ship sighted a UFO.
Sanderson reports that at 4:30 p.m. the ship was bombarded by a huge flaming object that zigzags through the sky, falls into the water, and disappears. But according to his reports, it couldn't have been a meteor. because meteors do not zigzag and move with apparent intelligent control. The story was even covered in the New York Times. First Officer V.E. Spencer says, quote, "I have seen meteors all over the world, but never such a large one as this." Throughout Sanderson's career, a cloud of mystery drifted around him.
Sanderson was a part of the British intelligence service, but what we're really cloudy about is a lot of his friends were in the OSS, which was the precursor to the CIA. And then, as we can tell from some of his books, Sanderson had a direct connection to the Office of Navy Intelligence and was getting information from them.
Until his death in 1973, Sanderson traversed the globe in search of underwater submerged objects. Today, some USO experts believe his research was provided to him by highly placed government sources.
Many of us wonder, was Sanderson still in the intelligence services? Was he still going on some of his expeditions, some of his explorations, and using part of what he was doing to feed back to his old friends in the intelligence services, but also getting new information for his books from them too?
At the end of his life, weakened by cancer, Sanderson fell victim to friends and enemies alike who coveted his research.
A lot of people would back their station wagon up to his bunkhouse and said they were going to borrow files and never brought them back.
Speculation continues in various circles about whether secret government operatives removed Sanderson's files, thereby destroying the best cache of deep-sea UFO evidence ever collected.
In the beginning, Ivan Sanderson was thinking about USOs as creatures that were in the air, that came into water. Towards the end of his career, he also had to engage in thinking about them as possibly intelligent craft from outer space.
Coming up, an eyewitness report of two massive disc-like objects emerging from an Australian lagoon and leaving evidence in its wake. According to experts, one of the most impressive traits of USOs is their ability to affect, change, and displace the surface of the water, in much the same way that UFOs in our skies reportedly generate similar crop circles on land.
An interesting aspect of USOs is the fact that they leave a physical presence on the water.
USOs create the same kind of effect over water, over ice, so there's a real similarity between the physical trace evidence of a USO landing and a UFO landing on planet Earth.
It's like if you took a glass and stuck it in water, right? Well, now you have a hole on the water.
To USO researchers, the most impressive and well-publicized water crop circle case is the Tully water nest case, which occurred in northern Australia in January 1966.
This Tully's Nest story was one of the most publicized USO/UFO events in Australia. In fact, it had much the same kind of publicity that Roswell had here in the United States because everybody was involved, the military, the newspapers. It became a tourist attraction. People made pilgrimages to Tully's Nest to see where the USO came out of the water.
Over the past decade, Australian researcher Bill Chalker has conducted the most intensive study of the Tully case.
At 9 a.m. on January the 19th, 1966, young farmer George Pedley was driving a tractor through a neighbouring farmer's property, a place called Horseshoe Lagoon near Tully in far north Queensland. And he first started to experience some problems with his tractor. It seemed to be sort of missing and as if it was about to stop on him, and then he heard this high-pitched hissing noise, and he looked in the direction of where this noise was coming from, and at about 20 to 30 feet away, rising from the lagoon, was a sort of a dish-shaped metallic-looking object that rose up to an altitude of about 30 to 40 feet, and then appeared to go into a shallow dive and then take off at high speed.
George Pedley described the object as appearing like two massive dinner plates stacked atop one another, about 30 feet in width and 12 feet in height.
It was a media sensation for quite a number of weeks, with sort of correspondents appearing, giving kind of on-the-spot reports, and there was even international coverage of it, and it was described in the press as a flying saucer nest.
This nest contained evidence of a reported USO touchdown, a distinctive imprint left behind on the surface of the lagoon.
The whirlpool effect in the water lasted for days and days after the USO took off. The Navy tested it, scientists tested it. A lot of tests were done on it and analyses were done on it, and there were all kinds of theories. And what they found was nothing could explain the water impressions.
In his numerous interviews and investigations over the years, Chalker found George Pedley to be a unique USO witness.
Yeah, George Pedley impressed me as being a very credible kind of witness, a typical kind of North Queenslander type cane farmer character, really the last kind of person you'd expect to come out with a story like this.
During the various public and private investigations in Tully over the subsequent weeks, at least a half-dozen other water nests were identified in the area. Water samples were sent to the physics department at the University of Brisbane for radiation testing. A reed from the center of the water nest tested positive for beta radiation, but within days the sample mysteriously disappeared. Research into the Tully case continues to this day. With no shortage of USO cases in the past and present, many continue to wonder why these objects are here and what could possibly be next.
My belief is you got this big universe and all these different planets. I mean, anything is possible. Why should we be the only intelligent beings?
Some researchers interpret the recent events involving USOs as something more sinister.
I believe that there are extraterrestrial civilizations who have been watching our development over the last 100 years with knowing there's a lot of promise, but also a lot of risk.
There's no doubt about it. There's something going on. They're covering stuff up. They're lying, and I would like to see congressional hearings in Washington to cut the crap and let's see what's going on, you know?
Does it mean...
The heat and energy comes from the molten core deep inside the lonely planet. If the Planemo is a gas giant like Jupiter, it may have a system of moons. The gravitational pull between the Planemo and its moons creates friction, causing the interior of the moons to stay warm.
These moons could also have life on them, in the same way that Jupiter's moon Io has volcanoes and has a lot of heat energy being generated by interactions with Jupiter and the other moons.
If anything lives here, it will be single cells, like common bacteria found on Earth. Not complex life forms. Without a sun to provide photosynthesis, these tiny organisms derive their energy from the chemistry in the soil of the Planemo, or its moon. On Earth, there are similar conditions. Colonies of bacteria are found deep within mine shafts in South Africa. They have no access to oxygen nor light, and survive entirely on the chemicals they make from the surrounding dirt. Their metabolisms are extremely slow, and they reproduce only once every 1,000 years. If life dwells on a sunless Planemo, it could be organisms like them, marooned when their planet was young. While Planemos slumber undisturbed, there are worse places to be in the universe. Like in the company of this lethal pulsar, some 980 light years from Earth, in the constellation of Virgo. From afar, a pulsar looks like a blinking light, but up close, pulsars machine gun their surroundings with deadly radiation. They are no place for planets. Yet something interferes with the precision of this pulsar. One explanation is that the anomaly is caused by a planet. But many astronomers are skeptical that planets orbiting a pulsar can exist.
The reason that's a problem is because pulsars are formed in these incredible explosions.
When a red giant star explodes, a titanic fireball known as a supernova unleashes as much energy in 1 minute as our sun generates in its lifetime.
When a star goes supernova, the shockwave is so immense it's hard to imagine any planet surviving that.
When the cosmic dust clears, all that remains is the crushed core of the red giant, pulsing in the heart of an expanding debris field. Matter blasted from the colossal explosion falls back to the pulsar and forms a disk. Within this chaos, a new world arises, born of fire and destruction, a planetary zombie raised from the carcass of the former red giant star.
It's amazing that planets could form in that environment.
A planet orbiting a pulsar will give you the feeling of being in a disco bar with a very strong strobe light, which is the pulsar.
Radiation from this stellar beast breaks down the organic molecules needed for life.
The pulsar has these very strong magnetic fields that are being spun around as the star is rotating quickly, and it's picking up any material, electrons, protons, and speeding them up and slinging them out at high speed. So it's like a solar wind with a vengeance.
I can't imagine that there would be much of an opportunity for even simple life, microbial life, to emerge and to flourish on a planet around a pulsar. Largely because if you were in the pulse, you'd be severely energized, and if you were not in the pulse, you would be completely devoid of energy.
The discovery of pulsar planets shows how new worlds can form in the wake of a star's destruction. No matter where a planet arises, the process of its birth is fraught with danger. Sometimes, the violence is so great, the end of the world comes before the beginning. 2007. Astronomers using the giant Gemini North telescope make a strange discovery in the Pleiades cluster some 400 light-years from Earth. A star known only by its catalog number, HD 23514, is surrounded by a giant donut-shaped cloud of dust and gas. The star in the middle of the donut shape is about 100 million years old. A cosmic toddler in astronomical terms. Our sun is 45 times older. The conditions are perfect for planets to form. But spectral analysis finds something strange. The dust is utterly pulverized. Typically, a newborn star is surrounded by fledgling planets.
Planets form around the young star in a protoplanetary disk of gas and dust. And then these planets go on their merry way orbiting the star, not realizing that they're in an orbit that's too close to another planet.
Millions of years ago, two primordial planets orbiting HD 23514 are spinning toward doom. As the two worlds close in, tidal forces torque each planet from spheres to egg shapes. Nothing remains. The two worlds are annihilated, creating the dust and debris seen around star HD 23514. 4 billion years ago, a similar apocalypse came to Earth. A Mars-sized planet forms in roughly the same orbit as the newborn Earth. Like the planets at HD 23514, Earth and this Mars-sized body are barreling toward each other.
If you happen to be unlucky enough to be standing on a growing planet when it was in the process of still becoming the Earth, you might wake up one morning and notice that the sky was getting darker and darker as a Mars-sized body was coming at you within a period of less than an hour.
And when it hits, the shock wave is felt all over the planet, scouring the surface of the Earth. The collision obliterates one side of the planet. Molten rock sprays out into space. The entire globe is peppered by meteors and noxious vapor.
It would actually make hell look like a Bahamas vacation.
The debris field from the collision coalesces and forms our moon. It is a new beginning for our planet.
Collisions are part of the birth process for planetary systems. Building up a terrestrial planet is probably all about colliding pieces of rock together.
And all across the galaxy, colliding pieces of rock are forming terrestrial worlds that defy the imagination.
There is a new planet out there. A planet we were not aware of existing before.
It is not just one planet. It is a new type of planet. Earth on steroids.
I like to call them super Earths. They're just like the Earth, except bigger, up to about 10 times the mass of the Earth. One family that the super Earths resemble just like our own Earth. Continents, oceans. Some of them may be very dry, like Mars. And then another family that we call water worlds or ocean planets that are completely covered with water.
Welcome to Gliese 581c.
This planet was found by Michel Mayor, and it orbits with 2 other planets around a very small star.
It's only 20 light-years away in the constellation of Libra and is one of the smallest terrestrial planets found beyond our solar system. That doesn't mean Gliese 581c is small. It's still a super-Earth with 5 times the mass of our home planet. But it's the possibility of liquid water that excites scientists.
An ocean planet feels like being in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. With no land in sight, just water, puffy white clouds, and blue sky above you. The winds on the ocean world are going to be similar to that of the Earth. So it will be a very good place to sail.
The weather's absolutely perfect. Every day you get a clear blue sky and the sun just stays in the same place. Now how's that for weather prediction?
No land anywhere. Even miles beneath the surface.
This water layer would extend very far down, at least a quarter of the way down in the planet.
But as we dive deeper into the sea, the pressure builds. At 35,000 feet below the surface, we pass the point where the deepest oceans on Earth bottom out. We pass the 100,000-foot mark. The pressure is so great, water itself begins to take on surprising new forms. At a depth of 10 times the greatest ocean depth on Earth, we reach the bottom.
When you have a large amount of water, then at the bottom of an ocean, you will form very high pressure in excess of 1 million atmospheres. And that pressure will compress the liquid water, that is the ocean, into a state which we call ice 7.
No, it's not like ice in your refrigerator. The molecules of water that are in the ice in your refrigerator are kind of all jumbled up. But if you form ice under very high pressure, then the water molecules can become ordered, they can become aligned.
I can show you a crystal that is a very good analog to ice 7. This is halite, also known commonly as rock salt.
Ice 7 may exist within our own solar system. Europa, a moon of Jupiter, could possibly have a mantle of liquid water surrounded by a thick, icy crust. The pressure from the crust is so great that Ice 7 might exist deep within these uncharted seas. If we scale up and thaw out Europa, it could be a water world similar to Gliese 581c.
One could imagine that life could emerge on a water world. After all, water is essential to life on Earth.
Everywhere on Earth where there is water, there is life. You cannot find a sterile drop of water on Earth unless you put it in the microwave yourself.
On this water world, there could be bacteria or any kind of life in the ocean itself.
But not all of the super-Earths are water worlds teeming with life.
When we talk about super-Earths, we talked about two major families of mostly rocky with some water and mostly water with an endless ocean. But one has to add to those a third family of probably very rare super-Earths and Earth-like planets, which are called carbon planets.
A carbon planet is unlike anything we've ever seen anywhere. A place with an alien chemistry, but loaded with very earthly treasures. Throughout our galaxy, there are planets barren and poor and inhospitable. But science is on the trail of a new type of planet, an entire world of treasure.
In our own solar system, in our sun and in all the stars nearby, there's always more oxygen than carbon. But if we think of a place in the universe where there's more carbon than oxygen, then planet formation is very different.
Spectral analysis shows carbon to be far more plentiful, 26,000 light-years away near the center of our galaxy. Planets that form here may contain a rich abundance of carbon. The morning sky on a carbon world would be anything but crystal clear and blue.
I'm picturing a yellow haze with black clouds of soot. And as you descended farther down in the atmosphere, I could imagine lakes that were made out of compounds like methane or gasoline. I'm picturing these bubbling, foul-smelling pits of black ooze, like an oil well.
With little or no water in the atmosphere, the air is made of carbon compounds.
Methane, butane, pentane, benzene, all these different kinds of carbon compounds that separate out when you refine gasoline. One day it might be raining benzene. The next day it might be raining butane.
Alien as carbon planets might seem, the air quality could be familiar to some.
The air in a very benzene-rich planet will resemble that of LA. A lot of smog particles that unfortunately we are quite used to from the exhaust of cars.
Despite the pollution, carbon planets could come with a sparkling upside.
You might see diamond because the planet may have substantial quantities of pure carbon that it's formed out of. And pure carbon, when you compress it, tends to form into diamond.
The secrets of exotic planets like these are waiting to be discovered all across the galaxy. But astronomers won't be satisfied until they find the Holy Grail. A planet like our own, one that sustains life, the next Earth.
People always ask me, do I think we're going to find another planet like Earth? And I answer, absolutely.
Every star probably has planets roughly the same size as our Earth.
We think that essentially every star has several Earth mass or super Earth mass planets. So if you have, say, 200 billion stars in the galaxy, that may mean there are 400 billion Earths in the galaxy or more.
400 billion Earths. The Kepler Space Observatory is the first instrument capable of finding one of these planets.
Kepler is looking at the constellation Cygnus in the night sky at 100,000 stars, taking picture after picture after picture, minute after minute. And the goal of Kepler is simple: to look for stars among the 100,000 that dim.
When a star dims slightly, it means a planet passes in front, blocking some of the light. How long the star dims and how much light gets blocked will tell scientists about the size of the planet and the distance from its sun.
A good analogy for this is looking for the dip in the light that you would see from a searchlight if a small moth flew across the searchlight. And so it's a really tiny dip in the light as the planet transits.
It is a very powerful technique because it allows you to discover planets that are even smaller than the size of the Earth around stars similar to the Sun.
It is a technique that is changing the course of science.
We think we may be able to find a planet that is habitable in the next few years.
Scientists estimate the Kepler mission will find a minimum of 50 alien Earths.
One of the big questions that anybody looking for life beyond the Earth is facing today is, what if we don't recognize life even though we discover it?
Conditions on an alien Earth may cause life to evolve differently.
My hope is that we'll see some sign that will make our hairs stand up on the back of our necks.
Whatever that sign is, it will be the first chapter on the greatest scientific story ever told. They're out there, lurking in the vastness of space. Planets so weird, even science fiction could not foresee them. For the first time ever, scientists are discovering alien worlds beyond our solar system. Places where ice is hot and rain is made of iron. They are uncharted, unearthly, unpredictable. And somewhere, hidden among these strange new worlds, scientists seek the greatest discoveries of all. Planets like ours, alien Earths.
35 seconds. Storage tank press closed.
March 6, 2009.
22 seconds. Later, GN2 pressure go.
This Delta II rocket is going through its final pre-flight check.
7.3. Drop 1.
Engine start, 1, 0, and liftoff.
It is the start of an extraordinarily ambitious mission. The Kepler Space Observatory is hunting for planets like Earth within a region of 100,000 stars. It is the culmination of a journey that began more than a decade ago with one of the most profound scientific discoveries ever made. (1995). Swiss astronomer Michel Mayor and his team make a routine observation of stars in the constellation Pegasus, located 50 light-years away. But the instruments show something strange. One star is violently lurching and wobbling.
What we discovered, it's one of these stars have a velocity changing with time.
What is powerful enough to disturb a star the size of our sun? Mayor offers a radical answer: a planet. But no one has ever seen a planet around another sun-like star.
Problem in detecting planets around other stars is that as a planet orbits a nearby star, that planet gets lost because of its feeble light in the glare of the very bright star.
In spite of the odds, Mayor relies on his data and is convinced the wobbles are caused by the gravitational pull of an orbiting planet.
When I read this claim from Michel Mayor, I was very skeptical. There had been many false claims of the first planet ever discovered around another star, and I thought to myself, oh boy, here we go again. So I decided to observe the star on 4 consecutive nights. And stunningly, the star was shown to wobble exactly as Michel Mayor had said.
Michel Mayor and his teammate Didier Queloz announced their discovery. It rocks the scientific community.
They had found for the first time reproducible, confirmable evidence of the existence of a planet around a sun-like star.
Officially called 51 Pegasi b, the planet is nicknamed Bellerophon in honor of the Greek hero who tamed the winged horse Pegasus. It is a planet that breaks all the rules. Bellerophon roasts in the blazing starlight at temperatures of roughly 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. It is nearly 150 times more massive than Earth and is a gas giant like Jupiter.
A gas giant is a planet made mostly of hydrogen and helium. Only the outer layers are gas, but inside, hydrogen and helium is compressed to huge, huge, huge pressures. It doesn't resemble a gas at all.
Unlike anything found in our solar system, this is an entirely new class of planet, what scientists call a hot Jupiter.
If you go to Hawaii and see the lava flow there, that's how hot a hot Jupiter is. It's very, very hot.
The Earth is a comfortable 93 million miles away from the Sun.
These hot Jupiters are roughly 100 times closer, and so the amount of sunlight that they get is 10,000 times larger.
If this represents a star, and this a hot Jupiter is 3 to 4 stellar diameters away from the star. So that would be 1, 2, 3. This is how close a hot Jupiter would be to its star. Hot Jupiters are tidally locked. They present the same face to the star at all times, just like the moon does to Earth.
It's going to be permanent daylight on one side and permanent nighttime on the back. If I were stuck on a hot Jupiter, I'd want to be on the back side and hope that some of the heat from the front side facing the star would make its way around the back.
The variations in temperature make Bellerophon's atmosphere extremely windy. The wind howls at thousands of miles per hour, far beyond anything we could ever withstand. The heat blast guarantees water vapor cannot exist. But that doesn't mean there is no rain.
It's far too hot for water liquid clouds to form here. But instead, these clouds would be made out of iron.
Iron vapor can exist at temperatures much higher than water. And because of that, things could get a little messy.
You better have an umbrella that's pretty sturdy, because the iron is going to start coating your umbrella very rapidly and making it extremely heavy and just crush that umbrella.
The sky overhead is filled with dancing curtains of color. Charged particles from the nearby star make auroras far more extreme than the northern lights on Earth. There is something even more unique about this newly discovered world. Bellerophon orbits its sun in a blistering 4.2 days.
No self-respecting planet goes around a star in 4.2 days. None of the planets in our solar system take such a short amount of time.
For scientists, the tiny orbit challenges long-held notions of how planets form.
The fact that the planet was orbiting every 4 days was a total puzzle until one night in the middle of the night I woke up and said, well, this must be proof that planets migrate inwards. They don't stay put where they are.
The key to the puzzle is found in how planets are made.
Planets are a byproduct of star formation. When stars form, they have a disk of dust and debris around them, and out of that debris, planets form.
Much of what we know comes from Hubble Space Telescope, as it aims at regions like the Eagle Nebula. This interstellar cloud is studded with collapsing disks of dust and gas. A giant clump grows in the center of each disk. Temperatures reach a searing 18 million degrees. The same nuclear fusion that powers our sun is unleashed. The star is born. Radiation from the star generates a stellar wind that sweeps away leftover dust and debris. Some of the dust survives and remains in orbit around the newborn star. Over millions of years, the dust sticks together, forming knots that grow into asteroids, and the asteroids grow into planets. These planets migrate through the disk until they find a stable orbit. This is why Bellerophon is so close to its parent star. But one newly discovered world has found its stable orbit in a place no planet should ever go. 2001. Hubble Space Telescope is directed to an obscure star some 150 light-years away from Earth, in the constellation of Pegasus. This is the same region where Bellerophon was found 6 years earlier. Hubble is tracking another hot Jupiter, discovered by astronomer Jeff Marcy. But this one is different from Bellerophon.
You've probably heard of the planet HD 209458b. It's a terrible name.
A terrible name for a terrible place. HD 209458b has been dubbed by some as Osiris, after the Egyptian god of the dead. Osiris is over 200 times more massive than Earth. It has migrated perilously close to its sun, at a mere 4 million miles from the blazing solar surface. Osiris broils in a planetary hell. The average daily temperature on Osiris is over 2,000 degrees. Forget global warming. This is global frying, and it causes Osiris to lose an estimated 550,000 tons of air every second.
There's a leak of gas, a steady stream of hydrogen and helium, and that's making a big, huge cloud all around the planet.
Its atmosphere is bleeding into space. Scientists speculate that a colossal trail of gas spirals behind the planet for thousands of miles. Osiris presents an unprecedented opportunity for astronomers. Using Hubble, they analyze the alien planet's bloated atmosphere.
This is the absolutely first time where we could tell what is the composition of the atmosphere of an extrasolar planet.
Surprisingly, Hubble detects many of the basic chemicals needed for life. Sodium, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. But Osiris is far too hot for life as we know it.
There may be other forms of life, however, that thrive on higher temperatures.
But there's no solid surface as we know it on a hot Jupiter. So this life would have to be just tiny little microbes floating around on aerosols. And on our own Earth, we have life that floats around in our atmosphere. But that life didn't start there. So life almost certainly would not exist on hot Jupiters.
Astronomers have discovered many hot Jupiters since Bellerophon was found in 1995. But conditions on these worlds rule them out as places where the drama of life can unfold. One of these gas giants is a planet that teases the rules of evolution. Astronomer Jeff Marcy discovers something shocking about a planet orbiting a star called 16 Cygnus b, located some 70 light-years away in the constellation of Cygnus, the Swan.
The planet was clearly in an elongated orbit, bringing the planet close to and then far from the host star. And this, of course, defied our expectations based on our own solar system, where all of the planets go around our sun in nearly circular orbits like phonograph grooves in a record.
Like a giant yo-yo in space, the gas giant swings back and forth across its solar system. That is like the Earth swooping 25 million miles closer to the sun, then slinging past Mars, all the way out towards Jupiter every year. And like all of the gas giants in our solar system, this yo-yo planet might have an entourage of moons. Marcy speculates that one of these moons could be similar to Earth.
And here's where the interesting story begins. Imagine a rocky moon with lakes, oceans, maybe streams and waterfalls on the surface. The moon orbiting its planet, the two of them orbiting the host star.
Unlike the airless moon that circles the Earth, this moon is a world with extreme seasons. On Earth, the seasons are caused by the tilt of our planet. Here, they are caused by the elongated orbit.
These poor planets that are in these elongated elliptical orbits suffer terrible changes in their climate throughout a year.
As they make their closest approach, the Yo-Yo planet and its moon are blowtorched by the star. Summer begins. The atmosphere on the Earth-like moon is savaged with raging storms. Category 5 hurricanes on Earth are tiny eddies compared to the monster vortexes that form here. The clouds thicken as the water evaporates.
Temperatures rise dramatically. Any water or gases would heat up, and indeed the oceans would boil into steam, so you'd end up with a big steam bath.
During the peak of the summer, the entire moon is smothered in 800-degree temperatures. This is the closest approach to the star. During its 26-month orbit, the summer season is barely 2 months long. But what a season! The planet and its moon swing away from the furnace of the star. Temperatures fall to ranges we would find temperate and comfortable. With the coming of